And good evening and welcome to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. My topic this evening is the Shoreline Community Basic Needs Task Force, and with me to discuss this evening's topic is Jim Crawford. Jim, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well, and before we get started, I'm going to congratulate you on your award from the Old Saybrook Chamber.
That's right. Well, thank you.
Volunteer of the Year. Great stuff. They made a great choice.
Thank you. Well,
good for you. It's well deserved.
Thank you. Well, that and a buck might buy me a cup of coffee.
Yeah, well, you know.
Or I might have to buy my own coffee.
A little praise is a good thing. It's a good thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how have you been?
Good.
What's new?
Good. Well, I'm working with a group of terrific volunteers that represent the Shoreline Basic Needs Task Force. We have a variety of folks that you've had on from time to time who represent agencies and organizations throughout our region, and it was an outshoot of the Shoreline Soup Kitchens.
Right.
And one of the subcommittees, there are three subcommittees: one on hunger, one on housing, and then there's one on economic action. And I wanted to talk tonight a little bit about the Economic Action Committee, which is a pretty active group that is keyed in on initially the results of the Alice report, which showed that there was a significant need in our portion of the county for higher paying jobs, or jobs that more highly skilled jobs that people could access, and how they might be able to access those jobs. So we developed a model that we're using in Westbrook. We started in Westbrook because it seemed to be fertile ground. The worst numbers for Alice were in Westbrook. 34% of the population is at that point where they're really one minor disaster away from being in real trouble financially, whether it's a car breakdown, a medical issue, a boiler, any kind of an incident like that. These are people who are really challenged financially to survive in this area. So what we've done is we created essentially a small group of employers and stakeholders in Westbrook, brought them all together twice. The first time was in September, and then we recently had a follow-up session in December, and they represent the major employers in Westbrook. And we wanted to get feedback from them and input on what kinds of things could be done to improve the business environment in the area, how to go about getting folks better opportunities for skill development, what kind of things could be done. So that's been a very, very productive learning experience for us. There are two other members of the group from Westbrook working with me, Tony Koza and Andy Schatz, and they both have been terrific leaders in pulling this whole activity together.
Okay. So for those of us that are just joining us, who exactly is Alice?
So the Alice population is essentially those folks who live right at the level that is sustainable. In other words, in this area, according to statistics, family of four needs $64,000 in income to be financially stable. When you start to fall below that, then that creates situations where you can fall into serious financial problems, be unable to meet your needs in a variety of ways. These are not people who qualify for any assistance programs at all. These are just hardworking folks who are employed, and that's what ALICE stands for: Assets Limited, Income Constrained Employed. So a lot of these folks are working 2 or 3 jobs and just trying to make ends meet and trying to sustain in our part of the state.
Okay. And what else does the Shoreline Basics Community Task Force do? Well,
I think it's important to recognize what the objectives are for this.
Oh, sure.
For this action committee. We identified some major areas that are of concern. One of them is transportation. Another one is the availability of childcare. And as I said, job skills, opportunity to get into the advanced manufacturing pool where a lot of those jobs are. and also healthcare. So those 5 areas are very impactful when we start talking about how do we get people in a position where they can improve their economic lot, and also what can we do in schools to help students prepare for opportunities after high school. Those students who choose not to go to college very often go to junior colleges or technical schools,
Right.
or the military. And how do we pinpoint what job opportunities are there in our area that will keep our young people in the surrounding shoreline community, so that they can stay where they'd like to stay near family, but very often they're pushed out because they can't afford to be here. So I think, Pete, what we've discovered is that there are statewide, not just in our region, but statewide, there are right now about 25,000 jobs thereabouts that are out there that employers are looking to fill. A lot of those positions require technical skills in advanced manufacturing that they can't find. They can't find people who have those skills. So we talk to the technical schools, we talk to the community colleges, and we talk to the high schools about what kind of focus they can have, how they can help prepare students to meet those challenges. The employers talk very specifically about what kind of skills they're looking for. So you might find a very different skill set if you want to work for the Lee Company than you would if you were working for Whalen or you were working in the food service industry.
Right.
So where are those job skills training sessions available for kids? How do they go about accessing them? How do they go about paying for them? We've talked a lot with schools about shadowing programs and internship programs, and we learned that at Region 4 they have a terrific capstone program, which is a culmination of their senior year. Each student is required to have a community project that they present to a panel, and they also wind up presenting it in a written form also. And those are experiences they've had with local employers. Some have gone to work in law offices, some have gone to work for architects, others have gone to the vets, others have gone to pharmacies. So a wide number of employees in the area open up their doors and allow their students in their area to come in and get job exposure and to learn a little bit. It's just as important to know whether or not you're going to like a position as
Right.
it is to know if it's something that fits your needs. So it gives kids an opportunity to explore those things. And what we've also found is that in many cases, those employers find valuable resources in those students, and sometimes they're hired during the summer.
Right.
After high school or in college in summer, and it provides them with a nice, not only with a nice student income, but it also provides the employer with someone they know they've had experience with who has good work habits.
Now, how exactly did you get involved with the Shoreline Basic Needs Task Force?
Well, there were a variety of issues that they wanted to take up. As I said to you, they have 3 subcommittees, and
Yeah.
I originally was part of the Hunger Committee, and I remain on that committee, where we're primarily interested in getting federal nutrition programs for children that are available into all the schools, breakfast in addition to the school lunch program, summer meals. So what happened was my involvement with economic development in Westbrook led me to the Economic Action Subcommittee, and we decided we'd try this model here in Westbrook, see how it went, and we hope to fine-tune it, bring it to other communities that are served by the Shoreline Food Pantry. So we'll go probably to Essex next, and then maybe Old Saybrook, and we'll have the same kind of discussion, the same conversation. What are employers looking for? How can we mesh ambitions, desires, and skills with the opportunities that those employers are looking to fill?
And from what I understand, that the Shoreline Soup Kitchens actually has a new executive director as well.
They do. They do. Ellen, Ellen has been on now for it was over 6 months.
I was going to say, I had her on with me.
She'd been a very enthusiastic, as Patty Dowling was.
Yep, sure.
She's been a very enthusiastic supporter of these subcommittees, and we have monthly meetings of the entire task force where each of those subgroups reports out. You've had Lauren Ash and Dawn Parker and
sure.
Sarah Bird on here several times to talk about housing and the need for affordable housing in our region is an important thing. A lot of kids who would like to stay here, young families, are priced out. They can't stay here. We also have a lot of these things are interrelated. We have a huge population of folks who are in housing in academic rentals between September and May, and those folks are in the market for affordable housing, but they wind up being very transient because they have to go somewhere for those summer months because those academic rentals get rented out at a much higher rate.
Oh, totally.
So that's another big question. Stability for students and continuity in school, if you're moving around, is an important consideration.
Exactly.
So what we'd like to do, I think, in kind of a global picture of it, what we'd like to do is develop a clearinghouse for a lot of this information. In other words, there's a lot swirling around. There's a lot that we found out from employers, everybody from the retail, the restaurants, marinas, advanced manufacturing, I said retail. There's an abundance of information that's available. There is a need to meet those skill levels, and how we go about doing that needs to be more than just piecemeal. It needs to be coordinated in some way.
Jim, would you mind sticking around for another segment?
Love to.
We'll be right back.
They said I have troll teeth.
That my voice sounded like a possessed baby doll.
That no one would ever love someone as stupid as me.
That I was fat, ugly.
Disgusting.
The effect of bullying is potent.
We will no longer be the silent majority.
Now, when you see online bullying, there's something you can do about it.
We're gonna take action with the I.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness, and so are you.
It's a short ride from your neighborhood to your naturehood. To find a neighborhood park or green space near you, visit discovertheforest.org.
And welcome back to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show, sitting here with Jim Crawford. Jim, welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we were talking a little bit about in the first segment, Shoreline Basic Needs Task Force. Where would you like to open this segment talking about?
Well, I think there was an interesting discussion that took place in our second session with employers and social service agencies and those who work for the town, and that is the desire for more opportunities for entrepreneurs in the area, folks who would like to start a small business. How can they go about doing it? What kind of space is available? Should we, as a community, say, okay, well, there's an opportunity at the public library for a particular portion of the library to be used for meetings of folks who have business ideas about opportunities. They can share information about how they go about getting started, whether they're encountering any difficulties with local ordinances, regulations, getting approvals, how to go about doing those approvals. It's happening in bits and pieces in the state, not as much as it should, but there are, you've seen these like internet, they were originally internet cafes.
Yes.
And that was in the beginning of the whole laptop internet craze. Those were places where people gathered who had the ability to get onto the internet in a place where they were surrounded by others who were in a similar mindset.
Okay.
So this is just an expansion of that idea. So take a look around us, and there are opportunities for areas where we could have spaces for people who are interested in starting a business where they could set up. There are a lot of empty storefronts where they would be very convenient, and they serve a vital function if they were done in a way that was affordable and it provided the kind of services that people need. We had a very interesting talk with a couple of the major employers who said that wouldn't it be cool if we could do a local Shark Tank, just like the Shark Tank show?
There you go, yeah.
And have folks with ideas come before a group and present their proposals. And some of the employers were interested in exploring that idea, and they may put up a pool of money to get things started. Now it's obviously on a much more modest scale, but the idea is the same. And you look around, and there are a lot of businesses that pop up that many pop up and fail. But if they fail because they didn't have an opportunity to be in a location, or they didn't have office space, or they didn't have access to the internet, those are the kinds of things that maybe we should be providing.
Right.
Maybe we should look at ways to help create the climate for that kind of growth.
Exactly.
I mean, you see it all the time. You see, especially, just take examples in the food industry, whether it's food trucks or pop-ups we see in the summer.
Oh, yeah.
There are people who are, they got a lot of ambition, they got a lot of ideas, they have a lot of creativity, but the outlet for it or the opportunity to be able to do it isn't always there. And I think we can create a climate where that can happen with things a lot more technical than food trucks. Whether it's folks who work on restoring hardware, and or create software for computers. That there are all kinds of possibilities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, with the Basic Needs Task Force, obviously you guys are. How did you guys deal with what's going on up at the State House for budgets and?
Well, I think
money and all
what
that different stuff?
What happens is the process the budget process, when it gets dragged out, it becomes more and more cumbersome, and then when something happens, all of a sudden it has to happen at once.
Right.
So I don't know if you saw this, but this was on the federal level.
Okay.
There was one senator who threw a 550-page bill on the table and said, "I'm expected to read this and have to vote on it in 20 minutes. There's no way I can do it." Well, what happens is lots of times these things, either by design or by default, or an unintended consequence, things happen.
Right.
So today they meet Monday, the 8th of January. They're meeting up in Hartford to try to create one of those, try to improve one of those mistakes that was made when they cut off about 110 to 115,000 seniors, disabled folks from qualifying for Medicaid funds. And that was, nobody intended to do that, but it was one of those situations where if the old system said that if you made $25,000 or less you qualified, well, they changed the they changed the requirement and they cut it in half to 12,500. Well, that threw a whole bunch of people into a very serious situation. So a lot of things, as I said to you earlier, kind of intermesh, and unintended consequences are very often the result of trying to solve a problem that is really becoming a serious impediment. And then once you do it, you haven't thought the whole thing through. You're just happy you think you have a solution.
Right.
And you wind up with these situations where things happen that nobody really wanted to happen.
Exactly.
So, and you know, that happens all the time in communities too. When you try to create local ordinances about what kind of businesses you bring in, or what the signs have to look like, or whether a paint color fits in a particular district. I mean, those are all well-intentioned things, but they can very often become impediments to growth of business and businesses being eager to come into a community. That was a large part of our conversation in the first meeting that we had with employers, that were there things that were in place in Westbrook that we should look at, that we could address, and perhaps find ways to alleviate those impediments, if not completely eliminate them. And that's a significant conversation that needs to be held between government and the folks who invest in a community by bringing jobs.
And what were some of those issues that you guys
Well,
talked about?
I think, you know, for one, it becomes very cumbersome to have to go through the approval process.
Right.
When, for the most part, our boards and commissions are all volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
So if say one of the commissions doesn't have a quorum in one meeting, you've got to wait another month to get an approval.
Correct.
What kind of accommodation is made in the land use office or in the health department? How are all these things meshing together? Do they create a climate or an environment that's conducive to helping people who want to bring jobs or want to expand their businesses? How helpful are they? Are they a negative, or are they a negative and producing a situation that wasn't intended? Or are they positive and helpful in getting people through the process in a timely fashion? I mean, it can be a very tedious and frustrating situation where you want to spend your money, you want to create a business, and it's 6-8 months to get the approvals.
Exactly.
Because the process is cumbersome. Or, you know, we have sign restrictions,
Mm-hmm.
we have light restrictions. There are all kinds of things that need to be looked at. People need to talk about it and figure out whether or not that is something that is producing the desired effect.
Now, when you say light restrictions, what do you mean?
Well, there's a certain wattage of sign. You can't put a sign up on the town green that you're going to advertise the next carnival in town and have it be revolving and flashing and shining. That's not going to work.
No.
And that's an extreme example, but
Right.
there are lots of different kinds of restrictions on signage. Then they're based on, some of them are based on the wattage and the safety of motorists who are driving down the road, and the light will blind you.
Yeah, because you don't want
Or the size of the sign and how it relates to the business that it's designed to advertise. So those are things. Sidewalks.
Right.
We try to make sure that when a business expands or redevelopment is done on a particular property, that a sidewalk is put in front of it. Sometimes that can be counterproductive.
Right.
So lots of little things that not even going into the zoning regulations, that can become in every town, that can become a quagmire where there's so many conflicting elements there. And then folks, rightfully so, should have certain kinds of restrictions, but when it becomes so cumbersome that it just deflates the the ability of people to be able to expand their businesses and becomes a problem. And we've got a huge problem in our area with wastewater.
Oh, yeah.
That's a huge issue. So
Well, it's-
where we go with that and how we deal with that is going to be a very important factor in what kind of growth we see here.
Thoughts, feelings about the wastewater issue?
Well, I think some days I think it needs to be solved regionally.
Mm-hmm.
Other days I think, I'm going to be long gone before they solve this regionally. It's a very serious issue that is complicated by the fact that for years we've had properties south of Route 1 that have been primarily occupied for only a small portion of the year. And then as winterization takes place, all other kinds of issues are raised because people are there longer. The wastewater is in volume is more. But the positive side is that technology is always advancing in this field, and there are opportunities to do things both locally and regionally that hopefully will never get us to the point where we see a huge sewer treatment plant on one of these estuaries around here. But it's an issue that has to be dealt with.
Exactly. And we're about to say goodnight, but before we do, if people want more information on the Shoreline Basic Needs Task Force, where should they go?
They should go to the website for the Shoreline Soup Kitchens and Pantries,
All right.
and they will find information there that'll take them directly to the Shoreline Basic Needs Task Force. And
Yes.
we're always looking for new volunteers. We're looking for people to step up and share their ideas.
Excellent. Jim Crawford, thanks for coming down. We'll see you soon.
Great.
All right.
Thanks, Pete.
Thanks, Jim. On behalf of Jim Crawford, I'm Pete Mezzetti. Thanks, good night, and we'll see you next time.